Hey guys, my name is Reese. I own a group of construction companies that's doing a little over $4 million a year, and I'm making these videos because I've gotten a lot of questions and I can't work with a lot of companies, and so hopefully this stuff will help. I've gotten a lot of questions about some of our larger projects, but I've gotten more questions about the smaller stuff that is a little bit more relative to getting off the ground, some of your foundational projects that are really the bedrock of some of your early portfolio and a lot of the money you get in the beginning. And so I wanted to go over a job where this is probably about 4 years ago at this point, and it was a retaining wall job I got off of Google. It was just a Google Ads pay-per-click kind of thing that went to our website. I came out, it was about an hour from the shop I had at the time, and he wanted some kind of wall system to go around his pool. You can see there's somebody working on a fiberglass pool that was just installed from a local company, and he's got everything rough graded, but he really needed it finished out and wanted me to take care of the wall. So, and then final landscape was going to come after that, and then decking. So originally looking at this, if you're going in, it's a fairly nice neighborhood. I mean, there are probably $600,000 or $700,000 houses, as you can see in the background. Very nice, but this was a little bit on a budget. He was doing it in cash. He didn't want any debt, and it was a little bit more of a cost-sensitive project. When you go to this kind of thing, everybody's going to recommend a little bit different of a solution. He had it pretty good in mind what he wanted, but if he gets three people out to bid, there's going to be some kind of fluctuation of what people are going to offer. And when I'm asking him questions about what he wants, what he's desiring, what kind of project he's looking to have in the end, first things is because he's doing a fiberglass pool, it's not gunite, it's not anything super high end, it's a nice pool. He's also doing concrete decking. So those two things already off the bat are telling me, hey, this is going to be a little bit more on a budget. This is cost sensitive. I'm not going to recommend, I didn't do a lot of hardscapes at the time, but I was doing a lot of walls. And so I wasn't going to recommend something that was stacked stone or made of tile or granite facing or any crazy thing like that, because there is some exotic stuff that can go around a pool. I thought that, hey, an 8-inch modular block retaining wall, at the time there's was a color called Carriage House that we could use. That it was a pretty nice looking color, and so that's what I offered, and he really liked it. He thought the costs that I was throwing out was pretty good, and I was giving him a range. This one ended up being a little over $12,000, and we got the job. But backing up a little bit, we go through, I go through the process. I explain to him what's going to happen, and I explain to him the construction process, how long it's going to take, and what we're going to be doing. He's got a pile of gravel there on the side. I'm asking, hey, is that extra? Can we use that? It turns out that it was a couple tons of gravel that was left over from the actual pool. They lined the entire side of the pool with in gravel, and so that was their extra, and he said we could use that. So that's great. I explained to him that I could use that, and that could save a little bit off the price. So going into it, we're going to taper down that side you can see on the left, and that's going to go down to 0 where the grade drops off. And so this is going to be about a 50-foot long by 3 foot at the tallest, and then tapering down to 1 foot. And then his driveway, which you can kind of see on the very side, it's about 3 foot from where the top of the cap is going to be. So there was very minimal excavation that had to be done. The biggest thing we had to do was excavate the footer, which the ground, after just probing everything and kind of kicking dirt around on the site after he walked back inside, it was pretty firm, but that was the gist of what had to be done. And to set finishing expectations, which I believe is super, super important, I asked him, hey, what do you want this thing to look like when it's done? Maybe unlock some extra line items that I could put into my bid. And he explained that whatever grass we tore up on the way in, just coming off the driveway with machines, just put it back when you're done. If you have to tear up the grass, he would like that replaced. And so I had 2 pallets of sod in my bid, and then we also were just doing seed. After we graded out that bank, we're just going to do seed and straw on the backside. We're going to do straw mats, and then just go that way. But going into it, the first thing you're going to think of, take a lot of pictures, take measurements. I was an old school guy. I just used a tape measure and walked it out. And so walk around everything, get a good feel. Imagine how long it's going to take a crew to do this. At the time, I had a couple 3-man crews, and that one of them was going to be on this job. and I would send them out here with just a skid steer, a truck, trailer, and then they were going to be delivering the material themselves and then building the wall themselves. Keep in mind, just some things to mention. I'd be looking at this and think, okay, well, there's the mesh that's going to be for the concrete pool decking, and then you can't really see it, but there's a bonding wire that goes around the pool that is very important for to pass inspection that they hadn't gone through yet. They just got the thing installed. Key point, if there's going to be guys running around there with a skid steer, unless they plan on doing it by hand, which would be a great idea. You could do it in this case, but we were going to use a skid steer, and we wanted to make sure we didn't mess those up. So I informed him, hey, we're going to be folding that over real neat and putting a little bit of cloth in between that and the pool coping, which is just a plastic coping, as you can see, making sure that that wire is not going to dip into the water and then leach rust or anything like that out into the water. We wanted to make sure of that. As far as the project expense, like I said, it was a 50 by 3 foot by 1 foot modular block wall. And I want to preface this, I have a much more complex pricing system than this now for a lot of our larger projects that is necessary. But in the beginning, I understand that's not realistic for everybody. And this is the way I did things for years, and it worked really well. And once you get a hold of it, it's very duplicatable and it's very scalable to a point. But for anything less than people doing $40,000 a month, I think this is a dynamite way, and it's an easy way to get everything done. So first things first, how long is it going to take? It's the biggest variable you're going to think about on the job. Everybody on some level is going to guess. There's no one that just knows everything and they're perfect, but all you can have is experience and a well-rounded guess on what is going to happen. So from my experience doing these kinds of projects and something similar to this, I know it was going to take about 3 days with 3 guys. Once they got on site, they're in it, they're working. And I had 1 day in there for just travel, getting materials. Maybe it's too wet to work first thing in the morning or whatever. But my guys at the time were getting paid about $20 an hour, roundabout. Some were less, some were more. The average was $20, and I also did pay overtime. Looking at this, that was going to be about $600 a day for 4 days. This is not including labor burden and all those kinds of things. That's going to be a little bit later. That equals about $2,400. This is not including profit. This is all just expense right now. So I'd go down the list, and then I'd think about my materials. So with this kind of wall, I would basically just take, if it's a 50 by 3 foot going down to 1 foot, I'm not a big fan of calculating every single block. I think there are some people that do that down to the wire, and you're going to overwhelm yourself with too much detail rather than figuring out ways where you can get almost perfect and then a little bit of margin, and then you're good. So I would basically take, most of this wall is going to be around 2 foot, a little over that, and so I just did 50 times about 2.7-ish, and so that's going to be around about 125 square foot. Including the footer. That height is including that. We're going to taper down that top side, you can see in the picture. And then also the block that I was buying comes on a pallet of 48, and so it was like 2.6 pallets worth of block, and so I'm going to buy 3 pallets of total block, right? I don't think you should price out partial pallets. So that's going to be 3 pallets of block at $1,080, which was about the price at the time. And then we need about 6 tons of gravel. There needs to be about 12 inches of gravel behind each block, and then 12 inches for the footer. This didn't have GeoGrid, and this was just gravel and a drainage system behind the wall. And so that's going to be about 6 tons of gravel exactly. And I do always budget in extra, but keep in mind, he's got a pile of gravel there we can use, and so I'm comfortable with that being my buffer. That was going to be the 6 tons, about $360. Then the caps on the wall, they're about 1.5 feet long per cap, and budgeting, so I'd basically divide 50 by 1.5, and then I would add a few caps in there because there's going to be cuts, and we're going to lose some length on those caps, and so you always want to have some extras. And you've also got to be on a lot of expectations. For most walls are going to be where you basically, when you step down, you're going to cut a block and then wedge it in between the lower and the upper, and then it just bridges that gap and covers the side of the block. So if you're planning on doing that, make sure you got some extras in there. That's going to be about 40 in this case, which is about 220. The drainage pipe, this is just going to be a 4-inch corrugated sleeved pipe, which is going to go behind the wall and then come out every 20 feet. And then that's going to be about $200 for the pipe. And then miscellaneous, this is like angle grinder blades, glue, stuff like that, I'm going to put in about $250 for that. So 15 bales of wheat straw. This is going to be on the back side. Again, I said I was going to do straw mats, but the price is going to be similar because we don't need as many of them. So I'm going to leave that there. And then 1 bag of seed, 2 pallets of Bermuda sod. That's about $562 at the time. And then I'm going to think about getting a skid steer for $1,200 for a week. This is assuming I'm renting. I owned one at the time right now, but for simplicity of pricing, even if you own one, it's easier to charge for it because you should be charging as if you're renting for the machine anyways. I'm a huge believer in that. It keeps things consistent. And with the forks you need and a bucket and then delivery for about a week, you can typically get that done for around $1,200 a week, depending on where you were getting it from. And that was market price for that time period. And then overhead, at the time, I had about $480 a day in overhead. And so that price is going to cover my truck. It's going to cover tires, maintenance, fuel, insurance, all that kind of stuff. That's also including labor burden and all of my office expenses, software, all that kind of stuff is calculated into that price. Again, how to calculate that price is a question for another video, but I knew that with my prices that it was going to be about $480 a day. And so that's what I was using. So that times 4 is $1,920 for overhead. And so so we get our total price, which I think it was around $8,000-ish. And now you got to decide what you want to make. At the time, which I still think is pretty accurate, is you're trying to make about $1,000 a day on these kinds of jobs after all expenses, overhead, and everything else. You can try and make less. There are guys that try and make $200. There's guys that make $500. There's guys that try and make $2,000. I think $1,000 is accurate for the amount of work this actually takes to get done and gets facilitated. Keep in mind, you got time with sales, and you got time with accounting, you got time with talking to the customer afterwards, and budget to make sure if something breaks or you need a change or a callback, you got a little money in there as well. So I think that's a great price to have as a benchmark to start out. And so with all of that being calculated, we're going to get about $12,692 for our total price. And I did end up getting this job. Again, this is a long time ago, and it went really smooth. We had a little hiccup in the middle with the footer. We found some rock that was underneath it when we started digging. Again, not a super deep footer, but we did hit it, and it took a little while to get it out. But because we priced the way we did, and I felt comfortable with that, I just passed it through. We didn't have to do change orders or anything like that. I think that's a little bit unreasonable for something like that, especially when you've priced and planned for those kinds of things. And everything went smooth. We got paid, got our check, and it worked out really well. I don't have any pictures of this, unfortunately, when we completed it. It was a pretty straightforward job, as you can see. It ended up dying right about there and then tapering back down to 1 where we cut the hillside going down to grade. We ended up just tapering the backside and then cleaning everything up, pressure washing the driveway, and then getting our 2 pallets of sod in. And everybody was happy, got a 5-star review, and got on with our day. So if you like these kinds of projects, let me know in the comments. This is a pretty simplistic pricing structure and way of doing things. It's simple, it works. It's how most people are doing that at this size of projects, and is very, very normal. And I promise you, if you get good at it, it'll be like second nature. You can turn bids around super quick, and customers will love you for it. So if you like these, let me know. Like, subscribe. I'll be posting some other videos of jobs that are $50,000, $100,000, and I can also do projects, go over some of our past projects that are in the 200s and 500s and 700s and stuff like that if you are interested. However, I think these kinds of jobs are the bedrock for getting your company off the ground and really developing that first section of stable cash flow that you can use to propel your business forward. So again, like, subscribe, comment. I'll see you in the next one.